This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Two of a series of interviews I'm doing with John Kamanec on the research that he's done, as he proved in part one, the extensive research he's done into the case of and execution of Roy Mitchell. He's done detailed work looking through the archives to help us understand this case that is an important local case, definitely an important state case, and has national implications, I think, as well. John, thanks for coming back with me.
Yeah, good to be back.
I was reminding you before we started that we left off the case of Roy Mitchell with the killing of Jesse Thomas and the way in which Jesse Thomas's life gets wrapped up in these series of killings that are going on. And so maybe if you could help pick up for us where Roy is at the time, or bring Roy back into the story for us.
What do you mean as far as what he's doing right now?
Well, he was released. We know he was released. He was arrested under suspicion, but when Thomas was killed, Mitchell is released. And so
actually he was arrested at a crap game, and that's why he was there, surprisingly. I happened to find that out again as I was going through some of my notes.
Uh-huh.
So, he kind of laid low after that summer. He didn't do much of anything that he's got caught at. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
No telling what he could have been doing.
Okay, so Jesse Thomas was May 1922. So you're talking about the summer 22. He lays low.
Right. Yeah. His mother remarries, so he might have gone down there.
Mm-hmm.
He did steal some inner tubes, 3 inner tubes worth $9 altogether, but I don't know what became of that case because no record on it other than the arrest.
I see.
So that's nothing, So, his brother also got married down there in Belton. He married a woman, Vera Robinson, and never had any kids, but he had a good life after that. He was a sergeant in the Quartermaster Corps in World War One.
Oh wow!
Roy at the time, when World War One was going on, Roy was maybe at the county farm in Marlin.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, it was Travis. I don't know if you know where that is. It's just north of Rosebud.
Okay.
It's probably nothing there now.
Yeah, but Falls County. County.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he after the problem he had with Mr. Enoch out there at Tekla, where he robbed the store, he ended up. They said that he had time that he needed to serve in Falls County. That nobody ever explained what it was or anything. Well, anyway, next time he really pops up on the radar as far as killing anybody was just about 101 years ago, almost today.
Mm-hmm.
Was out there. He killed a Grady Skipworth at Lover's Leap, and the Grady was out with his girlfriend. Now I always call her Butcher, but I was told the proper way is Boucher.
Boucher, yeah.
But anyway, Naomi Boucher was 19 or 20 years old, and he was about the same. He's maybe 21. Well-liked man.
Mm-hmm.
He worked for his father as a carpenter, and you could write a whole book just on this case because it goes all over the place. Everybody gets involved. Everybody messes up. It's terrible. The couple was out riding around, and they end up going to Cameron Park, and they decide there's a car there at the time. Grady gets out, goes, talks to the people, gets a cigarette, comes back, decides he doesn't want to be there right then. They go driving around a little bit. About 9 o'clock or so, he suggests they go back to Cameron Park. He gets there. Roy Mitchell is there hiding behind the pavilion up at Lover's Leap. And after they park, he goes and makes a noise, gets their attention. She announces, "Hey, somebody out there." They go and Grady gets out, comes over and sees Roy, and Roy tells them both get out. Roy's got a shotgun with him, a single barrel, and Grady starts to approach him, and he ends up shooting him, and hits him right an inch or so below the chin on his neck, and then it comes out of his backbone. So he dies instantly. And then the girl starts screaming. Well, he goes, "Wait a second, you a white girl or a black girl?" He says, "Well, I'm a white girl. It's so dark out there. You know what Cameron Park looks like."
Yeah.
Anyway, and he goes, "Well, who'd I shoot then?" And she said, "Well, you shot Grady Skipworth." And he checked, and he didn't know who Grady Skipworth was. What he'd done, the confession that he put in the paper later, it was somewhat edited. And what they did was he said that he was out looking for a friend of his and a woman that was supposed to be there. He had taken his shotgun up there. He was going to kill the guy. It was a revenge type killing at that point. Guy didn't show up. He got the wrong person. He just shot the first person he seen or barely seen in the dark. And he goes and drags the body to the cliff, throws him off the cliff then. Has her drive the car to the Baker house. J.W. Baker was the old sheriff, and he was also the county clerk at the time. And Baker Lane runs in front of his house, but at the time there's another road that goes right behind it, and now it's a street. But at that time it was just dirt trail and went to barbed wire fence and stopped. Well, he drove in there with rape on his mind, and before anything could happen, there was 3 people come walking up the road. I mean, along the fence line on the opposite side of the fence. It was J.P. Williams and his son Gilbert, he was 16, and a black child that was with them. They were out possum hunting, and Roy goes and turned the lights on in the car in their face and told him to stop. And Mr. Williams continued a little bit, and he said, "No, stop." So, and I think he might have seen the shotgun at that time. Well, Mr. Williams thought he was talking to a white man, and that causes lots and lots of troubles after that.
I see. In the investigation.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Everybody, right off the bat, the people thought that it was a white person that done it, but she said it was a black guy, and they didn't believe her. Well, they go, and he tells them to go the other way, and they get smart and they go the other way to their house. They were living out there in the cedar breaks, further north of there. And when he got home, the wife said, "Hey, did you hear that shot?" And he said, "Man, didn't think nothing of it. He never heard the shot, so he didn't think anything. He didn't think it was strange that some guy told him to get away from his car and his woman at night out there." So Roy then, he gets in the car, according to him, he backed it all the way out 400 feet down the dirt road. And Mr. Williams was real impressed on that. He said that he could handle a Ford real good, and he had to be a white guy. And he sounded like a white guy. So, that's what I heard.
Yeah.
Well, he takes her over to Circle Point then, and somebody was parked there, but they left real quick. And then he parks, has her take his coat. They walked down to the north to the left as you get into Circle Point, and it starts downhill right there.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, they went over there. They he raped her at least once, maybe twice, and then he goes and he's getting a stick and he's poking the stick in down the barrel to get the shotgun shell out. This thing's been empty all this time.
Oh my gosh.
She could have run off, or it wouldn't have helped her any. But
Yeah.
if she had known it, she could have tried to get away. But it'd been pretty tough. And the possum hunters, they could have done something. They didn't know. She could have run at that point, possibly. But anyways, then she asked him what he's going to do, and he says, well, I'm going to kill you. And his side of the story is that she just kind of walked off a little ways and then jumped off the cliff. And his side, her side of the story was he said, well, it makes too much noise anyway, so he just picked her up and threw her off the cliff. Later on, the Texas Ranger said it was a 200-foot tall cliff and all this kind of stuff. And it's 100 feet from the top of the cliff to the water's edge, basically.
Yeah.
Of course, now you got that road down there.
There's a little river trail there.
Yeah, that river trail. It's there because there's a water line that runs through there that they put in.
Mm-hmm.
So it could have been sloped a little bit more. It didn't have that nice grade on it right there. He goes and if he threw her off, the police that checked it out later said they found where she bounced about 3 times. And really, with walking down the trail first and then the debris at the bottom of the hill and everything, she might have fell about 50 feet of the 100 at the most. And she come to rest in a cedar tree where somebody had thrown out an old bed frame. And after she got loose, she tried to climb up the hill. It didn't do any good. So she slid down to the water's edge. And first she tried to go to the mouth of Bosque, which is about 1,500 feet. And then she changed her mind because no good going that way. So she heads towards town. And she ended up having her right leg was sprained and her ankle was sprained. And she had bruises and stuff like that. So she was able to walk, hobble actually. She ends up walking all the way to the main gate of the park at the time, which is right there on Herring. And then she went down 5th Street hoping to get a trolley, but they were closed at the time. I mean, off.
It's too late.
Yeah, way too late at that time. And then she ended up walking about where the Harrison house is. Mm-hmm. And she knew some people there, so they took her in. They called the cops. Cops come. The doctor come. Her brother was out looking for her, so he came too. Anyway, they got her home, and then the mess started.
Yeah, yeah.
They first off they had to get Grady.
Yeah.
So they ended up one guy. If you go far enough, there's some ravines there you can go down, but you ain't going down that cliff. Mm-hmm. And they tried to say that the policeman went down the cliff at night. Yeah, that didn't happen.
Yeah. I don't think so.
Nobody's going up and down there.
Yeah.
So anyway, they ended up getting a boat at the mouth of Bosque, rowing up, get his body, have an inquest out there, and then took it to the undertaker. And in the meantime, they were trying to figure out how a white guy could dress up like a black person and confuse a person in the night. Oh, that's the police for you. Mm-hmm. They get a theory in their head and they're stuck.
Yeah.
Well, they had all kinds of different people investigating, and one person said that there was a car went to East Waco that night and he got 3 of the license numbers, and it had 2 men and a woman in it, and they just sure that it could have been something to do with that. And the Mr. Skipworth, Elijah Skipworth was his name. He was sure, pretty sure that it was a family affair from the Bouchers.
I see. Okay.
Now, the Boucher brothers, both of them were at home, had witnesses that they were inside the house and everything. There was no way they could have been involved with it at all. About 1 o'clock or so, the one brother had gone out looking for her, but that was, this has all happened at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, something like that.
Yeah.
The cops all got together and they started arresting people and then releasing them right and left. In fact, at one point, they arrested the 2 brothers and a brother-in-law, I think, and this was right at Thanksgiving. How you look at, your sister gets, attacked and everything, and she said they were trying to say that for somehow they had maybe Grady had done something wrong to her, and that they decided to kill him. But then they decided to also throw her off the cliff and, and make her walk because they found the footprints all down the riverside and everything.
So they discounted her sexual assault, and they said that was all staged.
Well,
yeah.
Well, the falling off the cliff and all that was staged, they thought.
Okay.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Too much evidence for that.
Mm-hmm.
And, the one main thing was Elijah Skipworth said that his son had a black eye. Well, and it had to have been caused by a fight before he died, not after he died. Well, he was dragged on face down to the cliff and then thrown off. Doctors will tell you, if your heart's not pumping, you're not going to have bruises on you. They're not going to bruise up afterwards, but I don't know what happened, what they thought this black eye was.
Mm-hmm.
But they just knew that was the reason. Later on, when Roy Mitchell was caught, Roy Mitchell actually confessed to the father at the jail. He came to the jail to see Roy. Roy looked at him and said, "I'm sorry I killed your son," all that kind of stuff. Forgive me, whatever. And he said, "Well, I can't do that because he was a good kid and all that. You ruined my life," that kind of thing. Mm. And then he still continues there's a guy named Joe Miller. Joe Miller had stayed with the Bouchers after he got married. He come from San Antonio, got married, and they stayed at the Boucher house for a while. After Naomi got thrown off the cliff the next day, it was a Sunday later on, him and a bunch of people just went up there looking around, see what it was. They're going out gawking. Even went with the Boucher's cousin. They go up there, they park, and Mr. Williams is up there. He's cock of the walk now. He's getting to tell his story to everybody and all that kind of stuff. And he hears Joe Miller over there, his voice, and he says, "That's the man." He gets the license plates, turns it in to the police. The police check it out and everything, and now he's suspected. Of course, he's a white guy. He knows the family. He might be involved with a murder. It had to be a family thing. It couldn't just been a random act of violence. Mm-hmm. Well, he goes and Joe Miller, like I said, is a suspect. They end up having a little examination trial, and then they arrest a black guy named Ivory Clay. There's a letter that is sent to the police, to the Sheriff Buchanan at the time, and it says that they described him as man number 1, 2, and 3 because it was real confusing. You always have to give him some kind of designation because if the guy that was caught on Saturday, you can't give the person's name until they're indicted, and you have to kind of work it out like a puzzle. Well, I just said man number 1, 2, and 3. They said man number 1 and number 2 and 3 lived at this one place, and said they were involved with this killing of Carl Brenner, who was shot and killed. His car was taken from him on Old Springfield Road at the Twackney Bridge. He was shot in the back of the head, and his car was gone, and he was thrown off the bridge there, and he was found and never did find anything who did it. And he was one of the 3 unsolved killings. There was a Mr. Starling that owned a store out there about a mile away from that same location. And he'd been killed, robbed at his store. And then there was a guy named Mr. Walter Shropshire that was he was maybe a bootlegger. There was talk that he was involved with bootlegging, but he'd gone out he lived over here in East Waco. He went out to Twackney Bottoms to pick up a load of wood. He was going to come back and then park his vehicle and then deliver it the next day. Well, he's riding down the road with his vehicle, and apparently somebody hops on the back of the wagon and shoots him in the back with a load of buckshot, because there was seven pellets in a nice little pattern on his back and 2 off to the side. But his horse just keeps going. His head goes down. He looks like he's sleeping. And he gets all the way over here to the compress, and the horses decide to stop and eat some grass. And that's when some people driving by knew him, stopped to joke with him. And it turns out,
wow,
he's not joking.
Yeah.
So they go ahead and that was, like I said, those 3 people were the unsolved murders, and Roy was kind of suspected of all of them, but that was after he got caught for the other stuff.
Okay.
Well, let's see, where was I?
So in Grady's case, he's not arrested, and Roy's not arrested in that case.
No, he's not arrested till way later, and he's arrested for the let me go on about Ivory Clay. Ivory Clay, the only reason I mentioned him is because the tie into Brendan. Well, but then the note writer says, and I'm the one that killed Grady Skipworth, and I'm the only one. And if you come and arrest us, we'll make bond and we'll kill all the law. Well, what's that going to do? That's going to get. They named man 1, 2, and 3 in the note, so they're going to get arrested. They're going to know who number 4 is, who supposedly killed Grady Skipworth. And if they don't know, they're going to figure it out real quick. Well, they go to and they arrest all 4 of them. Grady Skipworth lives at the house with a couple of, one's the landlord, and then they go and they find a window blind with a bloody handprint on it, and green on one side, white on the other handprint. They find some shells, and one shell is a 10 gauge and looked like it had been tried to be forced into a 12 gauge shotgun. It had some scratches on it. And then there was a coat too. And I think it was a light colored coat, and they were, at one point when the Grady's car, well, it was a brother's car, but it was found at 19th and Sanger in the alley. There's a trolley ran down Sanger at the time, and somebody thought they seen a black guy leaving the area and getting on the trolley, but they said he was either going to East Waco or Cotton Palace, one or the other.
Yeah. Not very helpful.
They weren't real helpful. The only difference was he wasn't wearing the light colored coat like they found in Grady's house. He had a dark coat on, which Driscoll's coat was dark.
Okay.
But the one that he used had Naomi Boucher carry. It's just, and then they go ahead and they arrested Ivory Clay, and they took all 4 of the people up there and showed them to Naomi. And Ivory, unfortunately, must have been a wise ass, because said he had kind of a smile on his face and a semi-sneer, and they just didn't like him. And he was light-skinned, and apparently he might have had gold tooth too. So,
okay.
So he matched some of the, but the guy that when she was when they were dragging Grady's body off, he had his hat pulled down over his eyes, so she couldn't see real good. But she ended up saying, she thinks maybe that he could be the one. And next thing you know, Red Burton was really pushing it, and he wanted, that was his man, was Ivory Clay. And they went ahead and arrested him, and that was the best thing that ever happened to him, because 2 other murders a carjacking happened, and another murder happened while he was in jail.
I see.
And it was, like I said, the best thing that ever happened. And the day that he wasn't given bond, somebody got killed.
Okay.
So, and John Sheehy was his lawyer, John Sheehy #1, and he went out with a Texas Ranger named R.D. Shoemate. And John Bessenecker, in one of his books, says that Shoemate basically said he was the stupidest person in the world. He did the most foolish, asinine thing. He ends up, Ivory Clay ended up getting off. He had a little trial. The jury and the judge and all. Well, I don't know if he had a jury. He had a judge. I know it was an examination trial. So, judge said there's not enough evidence. He releases him, and the courtroom applauds him for that. So he's out of the picture. He gets on and goes down. He's told by Sheriff Stiegel to go down to the jail next door and tell them to give him his stuff that he can go home now. I was wondering if Stiegel was just making fun, seeing if they do that or not.
Yeah. That is strange.
Guy walks in and said, "Oh, they said I could go."
Yeah, can I have my stuff?
Yeah. Well, his dad put him on a train to Chicago, and that's where he ended up.
Okay.
He had a pregnant girlfriend that he married just at the time of the trial, and they ended up in Chicago, and the baby was born. This all happened in November and December, and they went up there right in December, and the next thing you know, his baby dies up there. He's born, and you figure out the dates. She must have, and then one of the the attorneys, when he was questioning the woman about alibi, wanted to know if she was pregnant. Yeah, I'm pregnant. You're not married yet? No, I'm not married yet, but they got married. And yeah, the baby was before the birth certificate. Wedding certificate. But anyway, it died up there, and so it said that's another one of the collateral damages of Roy Mitchell. She had to go 1,000 miles up to Chicago in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, the shoemate was determined that this was a family affair and that he needed to go and question them more. So what he does is he goes and takes and he picks up Naomi. She's with her mother going to her chiropractor down here around 9th in Austin. And he picks her up, and she's in terrible shape. She's, you know, the nerves are shot.
Trauma
of it all. And she spent time in the hospital, and it's, and then she's not hurting real bad from the leg. It's not anything that's major, but still she's on crutches. Looks good when you show up in court and everybody's picking you up and carrying you. She weighed 85 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
Well, that's why it's so easy to throw her off a cliff.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, anyway, he gets her and says, I just want to talk to her, Mom, and then takes her, and then he drives down, picks up the other brother was down at 7th in Austin somewhere, and then he called the other brother and told him to meet them, and he picks them all up, whisked them out of town, and took them to Dallas and hid them out there. Well, everybody's coming up saying, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And then it got involved with the courts. Governor Neff got called. Governor Neff put it on, I think the guy's name was Barton, was the head of the Rangers at the time, and said, it's on you. You take care of it. Unless you can't, then I'll take care of you. That kind of thing. So they the next thing they do is they put a warrant out for the Rangers' arrest, and he ignores ignores it, and he moves them around a couple places. They're up in McKinney, and I think one might have been in Rockwall for a while, but then they hid her out in the female deputy sheriff's house in Dallas. And then finally, Stiegel caught up with him and served the warrant and said, and then they said, well, I need to go talk to Mr. Barton. And then he after that, he was going to come back and appear before the judge. And he releases, he says, if you just give me a little more time. He said that it was some woman in Dallas had said that she knew who the murderer was and named a name, and that's how they arrested them somehow. Somehow they connected them to that. And he just wanted to talk to a couple more witnesses, and then he'd be satisfied. But he said that there's something, he knows that she's hiding a deep, dark secret. She can't sleep. She's having terrors and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
of course she is.
She's still dealing with the trauma of that. Yeah.
She saw her boyfriend killed in front of her, saw her body thrown off a cliff.
Yeah.
She was taken over, almost could get away from when the possum hunters come, but that chance went up in smoke. She was taken over and raped. She was thrown off a cliff. Then she had to save herself. And he's wondering why she's a little upset. And there was another woman about the same time, a 17-year-old girl named Margie Matthews, that had been raped by her landlord, who was 50-something years old. Well, they had a trial, and I'm not sure if they had two trials or not, but anyway, at one trial, the last trial, she walks in there with a pistol, shoots him 3 times, and then in front of judge, jury, bailiffs, everybody. And that was just for being raped, where all these other things happened to Naomi.
Yeah.
So, and he's wondering why she's upset.
Yeah. Wow.
Lucky she didn't have a gun then.
Yeah. Well, and they're also not believing her. I
Right.
mean, yeah.
Well, they give her, her and her brothers are brought back to Waco, and they get bail. William Cameron and his vice president go to bail for them, and I think it was $2,500 bail there, and then it's like 14, 15 to 1 now. So,
Mm-hmm.
but anyway, he did the bail for all three of them.
Oh, wow.
And then they were scheduled to appear later on in February. In the meantime, she was in and out the hospital and everything, and being cared to and all. And then the brother had been married. He had a new wife, and he was an idiot. Turns out he forgot he'd married this other girl as a joke.
Mm.
And after his name pops, what happened was he'd seen this girl and said, "Hey, you want to get married?" And they went down, they got married. And then it turned out, and then she went on back home and forgot all about it. Then his name pops up on the news and everything. And she goes, "Dad, I got to tell you something."
Yeah, that's my husband.
Yeah. Turns out we might be married. And he said, "What do you mean might be?" Well. So anyway, judge annuls that for him. He's nice. After all they've been through, you might as well get one little favor.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, he'd married this other woman, and then he had to go remarry her. And strange thing was the second wife and the third wife, actually. She died in the New London explosion.
Oh, wow.
She was one of 16 teachers that were killed in that.
Okay.
But by then they were divorced, and he married number 4, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
if you keep count that way.
Yeah. Wow.
But anyway, they were, like I said, scheduled later to have a trial. But in the meantime, they're going to have the examination trial for Joe Miller. Well, Joe Miller is brought in there, and Elijah Skipworth claims he went and checked out the tires. And he was looking at the tires that were there at that little road where they met, and the tires on his car. And he said, "Oh, they're just perfect match and everything." And the Texas Rangers said, "No, they ain't no match." Mm-hmm. One had it was supposed to be bald on the one side, and the other side, and the other 2 tires had a horseshoe print on them. Mm. And he said they don't look nothing like Grady Skipworth brothers' tires. And so they ended up going and John Sheehy went out with Shoemate. Figure my enemy is my friend, mm-hmm. that kind of thing. So Shoemate was going to, he said, some terrible places here in Waco to get information, and Sheehy was following around behind him as a lawyer to I guess, I'm not sure which one he was a lawyer to, but Ivory Clay was his client.
Okay.
And he figured any dirt they found on Joe Miller, that cleaned Ivory Clay up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in the end, that's basically what happened. They didn't have anything against Joe Miller because, there's nothing against.
Yeah. He didn't do it.
There's no evidence. Mm-hmm. I mean, some guys, what do you want to call it? Ear witness.
Yeah.
And he had alibis and everything. So and then they announce that that's okay. You can go home because we've caught the right guy. And at that point, they had Roy Mitchell.
Okay. This is January 23. 23.
Yeah.
23.
About January 29th or 30th of 23.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what happened was he'd tried to carjack one individual down there on South 12th Street. There was a Mrs. Foster and a Alessandro and Tony Alessandro. And I guess he's related to the Alessandros that were involved with Alessandro's band that was here.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, she was driving. He was a passenger. They're driving along. Roy jumps on the car on the running board with a shotgun, sticks it in the window, points it at her, and she guns the car. She's driving for all she's worth. He supposedly was teaching her how to drive.
Mm.
Apparently, she did real good.
Yeah, she took to it.
Yeah. She did what everybody should do.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, she guns the engine. They're driving along. Alessandro comes up and figures out he can push the gun away from her and pushes it down, and it fires, and said it made a hole about the size of a bucket in the floor.
Mm.
And then Roy gets in and they start tussling, and they end up in the back seat wrestling and all. He's still got the shotgun, and Roy says, "I got a pistol," and he didn't know if he had one or not. So he said, "Well, if you shoot the gun out, the other barrel out the window as we go, then you can get out." And he got out. Well, he left his hat behind.
Mm.
And previous to that, Christmas time, there was a black family, Mr. and Mrs. Carrington. They'd been married about 10 months, and they were driving around on South 12th Street as well. And Roy jumped in there and apparently run Mr. Carrington off. He left his wife behind and took off across the fields. I find him later on, he ended up moving to Montana. But that's the last I ever heard of him. And apparently she must have got a divorce because Roy ended up raping her and then was driving with her. And she jumps out of the car and jumps in this other guy's car. And then he jumps out, gets on the car. They're driving real fast, and the other driver makes a quick turn and throws him off. And then he's able to get to the police station. And the next day, Roy, his wife, and the woman and the police chief are all there. And the woman says, "Yeah, he did it." And the wife says, "No, he was home at 8 o'clock, or we were at the movies."
Mm.
Unfortunately, Minnie was. She always had the same story. He's there at 8 o'clock all the time.
Yeah. Mm.
But the cops didn't treat that as too much. I mean, apparently he was arrested and maybe bonded out real quick, but he is indicted for the woman's rape later on after all the others are arrested when everybody else finds out what he's done. But up till then, they just kind of letting it go, black on black crime.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't So, but
you said the cat. He left the cap behind.
Yeah, the cap was left behind.
Yeah,
they were showing it to a whole bunch of people. A person that was it was a brown checkered cap, I think it was. Sometimes I think it's green, but it could have been. I think it was brown. And anyway, he showed it to quite a few people around. One guy was Mr. Wedlow, who worked with Roy in the past at 2020 Tire Service. And he said, "Yeah, that's Roy's hat." And apparently they also showed it to another individual that was a storekeeper somewhere near where Roy lived. So he was on the radar all of a sudden.
Okay.
And also Mr. Mr. Farmer, the district attorney, and Stiegel had gotten together, and they were trying to figure out, a short list of suspects. And Roy's name came up apparently, and the Farmer was the attorney for Roy's accomplice when on the George Enoch store robbery in 1915, and Roy had said at the time that he had a thing about raping black women. He said if white men would quit raping black women, then black men would quit raping white women. And it was a grudge he had. So they said, well, maybe that had something to do with some of this, and so they just kept him in the back of their mind. Then when somebody come up and said, hey, this is his hat is in the wrong car at the wrong time, so they went and had Philip Hobbs go down and arrest him either 4th or 3rd in Austin Street one day, and took him to the sheriff's office, and he said, what's this for? And he said, oh, it's a crap game you ran out of, or we seen you running out of. So they just made it up on that. There was no warrant. They said, and he said, well, can I bond out? And he said, no, not going to let you bond out. And he said, tell us where you live, and we'll send somebody down there and let them know, tell your wife that you're not going to be in tonight. And so he tells them it was 608 Jefferson. And there used to be, on that side of Jefferson, there was 3 shotgun-style houses, but they're long gone now. There's a tilt wall building right where Rory's house would have been, a concrete one right there on the corner. And he gave them an address, and they did just to find out where he was. They sent a couple police down there sheriff's people down there to check it out. And when they did, they found a pistol in an armoire. They found a shotgun, and of course it apparently been fired recently. How they could tell, I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then they found what else? A few little things, but it all tied into the gun, tied into several murders and stuff like that. And then they went back a day or so later and investigated again. This time they find there's a chimney there that vents the heat from the kitchen and heat from any stove you got in the living room area. And they went and there was something. Usually you got a little flue cover there. Well, there was something covering. I heard like 3 different stories as what it was, but either way, something was covering it. They pulled that off, and there was a rope sitting there with a nail it was hanging from. They pull the rope up, and there's a gun on it or something, but the rope is what got them all excited, because the rope was the same kind of rope as was tied to Ed Holt, who had been dragged after getting killed.
Yeah.
So they said, of course it's identical.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. A grass rope, and it's a small one. And then they found a scabbard underneath at the bottom of the flue. They found, ink pens, razors, shaving mug, all kinds of stuff that belonged, the coat that belonged to Mr. Driscoll. They tied it to all these people.
Okay.
Well, now, in 1977, Roy's granddaughter come back into town. She had lived here for several years, and then she moved to New Jersey she was an educator up there. And she'd been told by her mother, who at the time was a 9-year-old child.
This is Marguerite's daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marguerite had told her that when she was 9 years old, the cops had come there and put a gun and like a rope in the garage, and then left. And then the mother got told about it that day, and so she went searching for it, couldn't find it, she said. And then she said they came back and put more stuff in there. Well, I can't see a cop saving all this stuff that's missing from crime scenes.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then deciding on who to give it to or hide it on.
Yeah.
Well, they go ahead and arrest Roy, and then. But before this, he killed 2 more people, and that's Holt and Dennekamp. They were killed a week or so before that.
Hey, let's take a break. Just one second.
Okay. Well, anyway, on January 20th that he killed the couple. What happened was he was working at this gravel pit out off of Loop 340 in that area. Old Springfield Road follows Elk Road, basically, except where it cuts around to the south now. But I mean, Old Springfield cut around to the south, and that's where Brendan and Starlings had been killed. Well, anyway, he around Christmas time he went to work out there at the gravel pits, and I think it was a Friday or whatever. He goes and he put his team up. He said, and his mother-in-law was living at the Coates farm. Coates, if you go down from Loop 340 going out the Fountain Parkway, first big curve it makes to the right is basically where the Coates farm was, and then Tawakney Creek, and it was across Tawakney Creek. It's about 300 acres or so. So anyway, and then there's a fence right there. I mean, a gate, and if you go down that gate, that's the Old Springfield Road, goes that way, and then it comes back around the other direction. Well, anyway, he put his team up and then walked to his mother-in-law's house, and the whole family was there. His in-laws were all there. He eats supper, takes a shotgun that's there, puts it outside the house. He's got some shotgun shells that are hidden up above a door. He liked hiding things above doors. They found some at his house as well, some shotgun shells. But they're, you can't tie them to anything like a good pistol shot. That was before they did all this primer stuff.
Yeah,
you
sure.
could check that.
Yeah.
But anyway, he ate and then walked down to it's Old Springfield Road, about 600 yards. That's all. 600 yards,
Wow.
shouting distance from his mother-in-law's house. Yeah. And there's an intersection there. It's called Clinton Lane, and sometimes it's called Pipkin Lane. And then right there at the intersection, he found a place and he took a nap, and some cars went by and everything. And finally, Mr. Holt's car come by with Mrs. Dennekamp in it. And they slow down. They go up Clinton Lane, he said about 150 yards or so. And it was real dark, and they turned the lights off, and he goes to get them because he said he went down there to rob somebody. He goes down there. The only way he can see the car is to get down low and see it on the skylight before he finally almost walks up on them. Well, they've got the cushions out of the car, and they're having sex there. This is January.
Oh my goodness.
In Texas. Come on. But anyway, and he's amazed. And he stayed and watched. He said he was amazed. They took him 10 minutes, and then he said they got in the car real fast, and like they were in a hurry or something. And he had to wait for Mr. Holt to get in the car because he didn't want to shoot her. He ends up shooting through the top glass of the window with a shotgun and hits him. It takes off part of his nose and some of his face, but it's not a kill shot.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets out and he's screaming and asking her if she can drive and all that kind of stuff. And then he takes off running. Roy takes another shot and misses. And then he reloads and he finally shoots a third time and hits him near the left side, near the kidneys. And then he kind of staggers off and disappears and drops. Well, at the same time, this other car she starts running and he has to grab her. He ends up hitting her in the back of the head with the shotgun, and it knocks off a piece of wood underneath the double barrel. And he's worried about that. And she stops. She's not going to scream no more. You know, she's had enough.
Mm-hmm.
And this car shows up, so they have to run and hide until the car disappears. And then now they're worried they need to find Mr. Holt. He could have gone off somewhere and got help, or he could have died, and they find him the next day and all that. And he's thinking all these problems. So they drive all around this guy's field, plowed field. This guy's going to love, Mr. Colt's going to love this. And they can't find him. This is his story. His story is that she gives him a false name and tells him that, and she says, well, I'm a good fella. Might as well get this over with, and you can take me back home then to town or somewhere near town. So he has sex with her, and then they go, and this is, like I said, it doesn't say that it's a rape. It just says it. And then she goes, they drive around some more, try and find the body, can't find it. He goes over, there's a little spring there. There's a spring with a little gully there. He drives over to that and talks her into having sex again, and then goes and as he's standing there by the car, he puts his hands up there and he's got his hand, and he hits the butt of a pistol right there in the door and pulls it out, and it's Mr. Holt's gun. And he thinks about it a while, and he ends up, well, okay, and then shoots her 4 times and kills her. Now he drives back to Waco, and then he starts thinking, well, they're going to find that little piece of thing, and they're going to, my mother-in-law's house right up there, they're going to definitely go check out, see if anybody's got a shotgun. And here I am, I've got the shotgun. They're going to tell them there's 2 shotguns there because there is another shotgun there. And when they say there's 2 of them and they can only produce 1, they're going to wonder, and then everybody's going to go to jail for a while until they can figure out who's done what. So he goes and decides, he turns around, goes back, and he eventually finds Mr. Holt's body. And then he doesn't want to get all bloody, so he ties a rope on it. He drags that to where she is and puts him there. And then he drives on home with a car with a windshield busted out of it and blood stains on the fenders, and drives on home, and not home, but he drives to 8th and Austin. In fact,
right in the shadow where we're
right by the Raleigh.
Yeah.
He parks it right there at the alley where there used to be a Safeway on the corner. He's right there. And nobody notices it till this is about 1:00 in the morning. A cop did see somebody drive in there, but they didn't know it was what it was, and didn't see it, and didn't see anybody leave it. And then he walks home, and it isn't until the next afternoon somebody notices the blood on the car.
Oh my gosh!
And they take it in, and in the meantime, they're reported missing. And they got they were looking at hospitals and everything for the family, hospitals and hotels, and they couldn't find them. Then the sister has a dream, and the sister says, "I think they're at the Twackney Bridge on Old Moreland Road," which is the wrong bridge, wrong road too. But anyway, so a friend and two sisters, a brother-in-law and the two sisters drive out there looking, and they don't find nothing at the bridge. So they drive a little more, and they get on those Springfield Road, and they say, "Well, what's this little trail go?" And they go up that little trail, and sure enough, there's the bodies. So they report it. At first, he tried to not disturb the women, and he was going to act like, "Well, I'm just going to turn around and hope they didn't see the bodies," but they spotted them. Yeah. So anyway, they go ahead and report it, and well, Roy also found that little piece of wood when he came back from and found Holt's body too. So he was all happy with that, but because he went out the next morning and found the piece of wood. Okay. That's what it is.
Okay.
He hid the body that evening, went out the next morning, and before anybody else got to work and found it. And then he had his stepson work for him that afternoon. He went on home at lunch. Stepson was like 12 years old or so, running a gravel truck or a gravel wagon.
No.
But so anyway, they start wanting to know who done it, and there was the sister, Helen, was a piece of work. Holt was her boyfriend for 2 or 3 years. There was a Everett Smith that was her boyfriend as well at the same time. Those two had fought quite a bit between themselves. There was an incident up there at Holt's sister's house that they got called on. There was also an incident at the Jacobs house, which was Dennecamp's her mother's house. So, and then there was another guy. I don't know why he got arrested. He was some kind of student, and he had a raincoat that had some blood stains on it that looked like he tried to wipe them off. And then there was a woman that got arrested too, and don't know why, but she got arrested, and they let her go, and then they arrested her again because they thought she looked like she ought to know something. And I said, well, that's something the cops would never have to worry about. They don't look like they know anything. But she finally got out, and so, and then several relatives went down there and asked about Smith and the other guy that was in jail at the time, and they got arrested. So you just stay away from the cops. But Everett Smith they finally ended up, he's the one that when they was looking at a hearing when Roy got caught.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So, but Helen, apparently she was going to have a date with Mr. Smith that night. Ethel Dennekamp had come down from San Antonio. She left. She didn't leave her second husband. She just went to visit her family, and she hadn't been out for a few days. So Mr. Holt shows up, and Mr. Holt had gotten married like in March or something like that. I guess he got tired of waiting for Helen. He gets married in March or so, and then by December, him and his wife both have divorce papers. I read hers. She said that he threatened to fill her head full of lead and goes on there. It's written up and called me and they had son of crossed out, but then they had bitch there. So she took that personal.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them, like I said, he had divorce papers in the car with him when he.
Oh, wow.
So, like I said, he was a piece of work. She was a piece of work. And so when they get the phone call, Helen says that, I don't know why my sister left. I don't know. And then, well, apparently either she was going to go out with Mr. Holt because Mr. Smith was coming over and didn't want them to run into each other right there, and she was going to be the peacemaker, or she just wanted to go out with a man twice her age. She was 21, he was 42, and a ladies' man for sure.
Yeah, yeah, wow.
And go driving in the country. And they just happened to park at the wrong place.
Yeah. So Mitchell is arrested. You said the evidence that they found from some of these earlier murders.
Oh,
yeah.
Everything that was missing except some watches and a gun or two that he claimed was either in the river or sold to a Mexican or something like that. Yeah, it was conclusive evidence. And it was in the paper, and he gets arrested and taken up to Hillsboro. And while he's up there, he gets a hold of the paper. And he kind of freaks out. He said, oh, heck, here I am. They've got all this evidence. They found Grady Skipworth had a watch chain that had a pair of dice on it, a green dice, and it didn't have the pips on it. It had numbers, regular numbers. Him and his brother had drilled a hole through it, so it was custom made, dice with numbers on it on a chain. Roy had taken it and pulled up some wallpaper and stuck it in a crack in the wall right there by the flue. And they found that. And it's kind of, how are you going to explain all this away?
Yeah.
He tried a little bit, but when he got the newspaper up there in Hillsboro, then he started not really acting crazy, but sort of. And I don't know if he was just shocked or what. He quit eating. He quit talking. He growled a little bit. Of course, that's only mandatory if you're going to act crazy. But they checked him out and said that they thought he was just malingering. They gave him some tests, and the tests involved sticking needles in him, lighting matches under his nose, pouring water on him, pulling his hair, seeing if he'd react. And he was pretty cool about all that. He didn't react to it, but they still said that he was malingering. And they ended up having to force feed him for a while.
Wow.
And
I'm assuming they moved him up to Hillsboro because of mob. I mean, they were yeah.
Well, Ivory Clay, the two brothers and brother-in-law, Naomi Boucher, had actually gone to Elijah Skipworth and asked if they could get with them and get a mob going to get Ivory at one time.
Yeah.
But they were the sheriff was doing his best not to have no mobs.
Yeah.
We had many black eyes when it came to that.
Yeah.
The sheriff, the mayor, the rangers, everybody, making sure that didn't happen again.
There is so you talk about when he's in Hillsboro, he stops eating, kind of stops being responsive. When did the confessions come in? I know there is a confession.
Well, they brought him back to Waco.
Okay.
Because they figured it's cheaper to force feed him here.
Yeah.
They'd run a tube down him, and he got sweet milk a court in the morning and court in the evening.
Mm.
And anyway, they brought him back. Now there's the confessions is another thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's like 3 different stories. If you go with Ethel Farmer or Ella Farmer, she was fed a bunch of hooey from Mr. Farmer and Stiegel, because they were doing their best to kind of cover up the Driscoll murder.
Mm-hmm.
And according to her, he just decided to confess, especially since he already knew what all the evidence was against him. Now, he always maintained that the district attorney had promised him he wouldn't hang, that he would make sure that he didn't get the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's accused of 8 murders and multiple rapes, carjackings, robberies.
Mm-hmm.
You throw a white woman off a cliff, and
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen to you
Mm-hmm.
is bad enough. You kill her boyfriend, you throw her off the cliff, and
Mm-hmm.
they're going to see you hang.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, like I said, he maintained that he was given promises, and that he was, and then he went back to the psychiatric test that they were doing up there in Hillsborough and saying, "Oh yeah, I just couldn't take any more abuse.
Being tortured.
I was being
Yeah.
tortured
Yeah.
and couldn't take any more abuse."
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one story.
Mm-hmm.
The other story was that, this is really interesting. There was a sheriff from Nacogdoches that named A.J. Spradley that was well known for the interesting ways he would go and get confessions. And according to, he gave an interview to a student, and the student come up and wrote a paper on it, and it was in a teacher's journal that I read. And in it, he says that when he came back from Hillsborough, they put him in a cell, and in the cell they had put in a dummy that looked like a dead body.
Mm.
They said it was a dead body. They hooked it up to wires. They said there was a ventriloquist nearby in another cell. And after everything, they said, "You're going to have to spend the night here with him, because in the morning we're going to move the body out. The undertaker come get it then." Well, anyway, Roy's sleeping there or whatever, and things get quiet, and all of a sudden, the bedclothes move a little bit, and the voice comes up, "Roy, why did you kill me?" And supposedly he freaked out and then wanted to start confessing then.
Mm-hmm.
That was that story. Now, they got the timing a little off as far as when it happened, because he was here, a day or two before he started confessing.
Mm-hmm.
But then Sheriff Stiegel and Farmer, their side was that they confronted him with all the evidence, and then he just said, "Yeah, okay,"
Mm-hmm.
and then confessed.
Yeah.
And kept confessing and kept confessing.
Mm-hmm. But we have, you read some of this from the court record. I mean, the confession that's entered into the
Yeah, I have
official record.
I have the confession for Holt and Dennycamp.
Okay,
It's the same one. That's the only one he appealed.
I see.
Well, he appealed that, but then and that paperwork went down there to Austin.
Mm-hmm.
2 other ones, the Driscoll and the Driscoll and who else? Anyway, those were in the newspaper,
Mm-hmm.
and they were just cleaned up a little bit and edited a little bit so they weren't as accurate. It leaves out a little bit because Naomi in one of the examination trials later on turns out, she apparently hadn't told her mama where she was supposed to be with this boy, and Roy asked, who are you? Who's your family? All that kind of stuff. Does your mama know where you are? And she said, no, she thinks I'm at the movies, and that kind of thing. So everybody kind of spins confessions just a little bit. And Roy didn't tell all the truth either, and all his, but they were real proud of the fact that they checked it out and verified each and every fact that he said to be true, which then just before he dies, he goes and gives up where the watch is and where what else? A watch and a gun that he said had been disposed of. And one was in Detroit and one was in Elmont.
Were they able to find both of those?
Oh yeah, they went and got them.
Wow.
And the people that had them gave them up quick too. But the thing was, Richard Scrambler that had the watch originally. I mean, he had two watches. He was given one watch, and he was supposed to sell it, and he never did. And then he was told they went up to Detroit and got it, and then it turns out I think it was the Bolton watch was the one was missing, and he goes and a week or so before he dies, he says, well, he's got the Bolton watch as well. That's going to be an embarrassing conversation. Why didn't you give me both watches?
Got to go back for the other watch.
Yeah. But it kind of, I always worry about Mr. Stramler, because Mr. Stramler, when the Driscoll got killed, Roy went north out of town, up either 15th or 18th Street, one or the other. It kind of varies a little, but he said he went up 15th. Stramler lived in the 1600 block of West. And there was also talk that a witness had thought she seen two people in the car when it left out of here, if she got the right car and all. But anyway, she thought she saw two people leave out of the Driscoll location, the alley. Roy had shotgun, he had a pistol, he had all this other stuff. You drop the car off up there in North Waco where he was playing up around Park Lake, then how are you going to get home with all that stuff? So I would think he would drop his accomplice and drop the stuff off there.
Yeah.
And then Stramler, next thing you know, he's moved out of town and he goes to Detroit. And it's probably to get away from Roy.
Yeah. Wow.
But I can't prove nothing. Nobody can prove any of this really, except for confessions and this and that.
Talk about the March trials, just kind of as you got into the documents, what stood out to you from those trials in March? Well,
they kind of carbon copies of each other.
Yeah.
But starts out they would either Farmer had kind of a formula on it. He would either, there'd be somebody come up and say how they found the body, maybe justice of the peace or whoever, and describe the wounds, and then maybe Farmer would get up there and read the confession, and then they had to tell how they got the confession from them. It was all voluntary and everything. Then Stiegel would get on and maybe confirm the facts that that's what happened. Then he would, Roy was testified in the first trial with Holt. Didn't do much good. And after I read the confession in open court. And
so he in the Holt trial, he refutes that confession.
He says that because I was under duress and because he had a good lawyer. Kingsbury was his lawyer, and several objections and stuff like that, trying to prove stuff. And Kingsbury was trying to get. They also had the Barker family, the Colcorn court murder. They wanted to get that read in there, just kind of show that maybe he'd confess to any old thing, you know?
Yeah.
Because I don't know about the sixth trial, if he was guilty or not, but he knew a lot. But then again, he also went to 3 of the trials, and he knew and the people were in jail some of them were in jail with him, where he could talk to them. And he had nothing to lose by that point, the 6th trial.
Well, you talk about the testimony in the whole trial. He doesn't help himself. Talk a little bit about what you mean by that when you say he doesn't help himself.
Well, he denies. He says he's got religion. He denies that he did it, and he they say we got this evidence, and some of it he makes some excuse for some, and others he just says I don't know. You know, deny any knowledge of it, and you'd think. And then it is until about the Bolton trial that he finally comes up with some wild stories to tell.
Yeah.
But anyway, the first trial, he found guilty. It doesn't take but 4 or 5 minutes after, the confession's hard to beat. And because he can't tell anything to refute it. And then the second trial was Denny Camp. Well, he decides not to testify in that because he got reamed out on the first one when the DA went through his confession line by line and said, "What about this? What about this?" And so he didn't testify in that. His wife testified in both of them. Said he was home at 8:00. He came in. Daughter took his shoes off. I fed him his supper. He fell asleep in his chair. I woke him up. He went to bed. That
was kind of the stock story.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then the third trial. Let's see, what was that? That was Grady Skipworth. And like I said, he'd already confessed to Elijah Skipworth, and they were still trying to still trying to say Joe Miller had something to do with it. And then finally, in this trial, the DA comes out and says, "Listen, are you going to try and blame Joe Miller for the killing?" And the defense said, "No, we're not trying for that." And he said, "Well, I want to exonerate him in public right now. Just get it over with." And I still don't think Elijah believed him. And they even had Roy had gave a sample of his voice to Mr. Williams, and Mr. Williams said, "No, he doesn't exactly sound like the man." So when he has him in front of him, he thinks he's a white guy, but he's a black guy. And then when he has a second chance to ID him, he says, "No, he sounds like a black guy, and it was a white guy that did it." So he lost all credibility. But they still found him guilty. But
did he testify in that trial?
Yeah. But still, same old thing.
Yeah.
You got the the confession to try and beat. And it sounds real good. If you ever read all through it, it sounds just like him. And you say, well, he doesn't sound like he's being arm twisted or nothing.
Yeah. And you said Naomi didn't get a good. Was she a witness in that?
No
trial? Okay.
Never, because she'd already testified against Ivory Clay.
Okay.
In court, identified him twice in court.
I see. Yeah.
So the same thing with Mrs. Hayes. She never testified because she picked out Jesse Thomas.
Yeah.
And Naomi could never have taken a grilling from a defense attorney anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the third trial.
And let's see, fourth trial was Driscoll.
Yeah. And you established they had a lot of evidence for that trial, just the stuff they found in his house. Yeah.
Oh, lots of material, and he admitted he had a confession to it.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that was the one that. What happened was when he started to confess, and Stiegel comes up and says, "Oh, hang on a second, Roy. Let me see if I can run it down to you how you did it." Well, everybody knew how he did it. He stood behind the door. He hit him with a axe. He drug the body off. He gets in his car and he drives off after stealing all the stuff and hiding. There's a blood trail with where he put cottonseed over it and all that kind of stuff. And it was real obvious how he did it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wanted to know why. Well, Stiegel was making sure nobody found out why. That's the one where Roy had written down a note and said, "This to teach him to fool with my wife."
Yeah.
Well, he had a black maid there that had been working there about a month, or cook, and had a previous maid worked there about 2 or 3 months before that. But anyway, the Ella Farmer, in her true detective story, she said that the maid had left her husband and taken her kids. He was a farmer out somewhere and had taken the kids and was living in Waco. And Roy had done a lot of handyman work for Mr. Driscoll, so he was around. One story was that he was living with the maid. The other was that he was dating her or something like that. Driscoll supposedly told Roy to quit coming around because he didn't want the man's wife, the woman, to have her husband show up and get mad at Driscoll because somebody's visiting his wife.
Mm.
And Driscoll's a constable, old white guy with a gun and a badge. He's on his own property. Some guy shows up and tells him that, I'm mad at you because so-and-so seeing my wife. He says, well, you, your wife, everybody just get off of here. Go, I'll get me another cook. That kind of thing. Or if you don't get off, I'll shoot you.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Driscoll supposedly got in a fight with Roy then because Roy didn't want to stay away. And supposedly hit him with a chair. Roy hit him. Roy got hit with a chair. And that's why he was mad and wanted to kill him, that kind of thing. That's Ella Farmer's story, which she gets from Mr. Farmer and Mr. Stiegel, and who are trying to kind of quiet things. Because Stiegel was a pallbearer at the funeral, along with 6 other guys, and there was like 20-something honorary pallbearers, all policemen and everything, and dignitaries. So
they're trying to guard his reputation.
And said she had a good image and everything. And I already said how he had he was divorced. And so anyway, they go and so that kind of covers up.
Yeah.
Nobody looks into it very hard. And Roy agrees, oh yeah, that's all right. But also I drove up this way and that way instead of this other direction. And and Roy wasn't admitting to anything else either. So, so yeah, that was, and I'm trying to think if there was any other cover-ups on that, but Ella Farmer, she had some other stuff that she did. She tried to say that Roy had snuck a car out at the Concord funeral cemetery. Not cemetery, but the and had all big old elaborate thing, and got his name put out there in the first 2 killings. And then when the Cottrell and the Sheffield people show up and end up being wounded, and eyewitnesses who didn't jump at the first person that they were put in front of them, they went through dozens of people. Every time some black guy get arrested, they take him over there to Cottrell or Sheffield and say, "Was this the guy who shot you?" And then, "No, too short, too fat, too ugly, too black, too white, too whatever." And so, but she doesn't even mention him being a suspect in that, which he wasn't, because nobody saw him there. And he wasn't a suspect in the first 2 either, apparently.
So there's going to be a total of how many trials?
6.
6 trials. Yeah. And I think the next one is the Bolton trial.
Yeah, the Bolton trial. And they got a lot quicker as they went along.
Yeah.
He had a bunch of groupies there for a while.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. The first 2 or 3 trials were well attended and newspapermen were always amazed that women would want to be a trial like that. All good gossip.
It's a big event. It's a trial of the century in town. Yeah.
It kind of slowed down later with him, but he's still drawing some.
Well, I want to talk about the Bolton case because I feel like it was pretty central in I know that was
Jesse Thomas.
Yeah, right? Jesse Thomas killing. But let's pick up there next time. We're going to have to do a part 3, John. You told me we're going to have to do a part 3.
Well, we'll see about 4 after that.
All right. Thanks, John.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to the Waco History Podcast. Like what you heard? Subscribe, rate, and review our show on iTunes so we can reach more listeners. You can find show notes and info on every episode at wacohistorypodcast.com and more info on Waco's past at wacohistory.org. Our theme music, used with permission, is Cross the Brazos at Waco, performed by the late Billy Walker. For more info on Billy's music, go to billywalker.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. This has been a Rogue Media Network production.
Frozen, heroes. Gonna tell you about frozen heroes. Gonna tell you about.
Hey, I'm Zach.
And I'm Mike.
And we have a fantastic new podcast to tell you about. Bros, Foes, and Heroes. It's the 2 of us looking into the world of comics, breaking down some characters that you may have never heard of, and some that are just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, so Zach comes up with a character each time, and I go into it just completely blind. I don't know who this person is or what their abilities are or anything, and basically I guess we kind of go over their origin story and just some of the ridiculous stuff that maybe, especially Golden Age stuff.
Oh, Golden Age stuff is always the best, and we will make sure to highlight all of the shenanigans and just absolute weirdness of everything.
Yeah, that's right. So subscribe today and follow us on Instagram at Bros, Foes, Heroes.
And if you don't, I know where you live. Not really, but please subscribe.
Frozen heroes. Gonna tell you about frozen heroes. Gonna tell you about.
Hi, I'm Hank. You might remember me from a show called King of the Hill. Check out a King of the Hill rewatch podcast. These boys ain't right, but they are funny. Find the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts or at roguemedianetwork.com. I tell you what.